The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response is called to order. Heads of State and Government, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Madam Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization, Mr. Alex van Trotsenberg, Senior Managing Director of the World Bank, Ms. Helen Clark, former co-chair of the Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome all of you to this high-level meeting under the overall theme of creating and mainstreaming political momentum and solidarity for pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Before proceeding further, in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 77/275, I first invite the high-level meeting to turn its attention to the draft political declaration entitled Political Declaration of the United Nations General Assembly High-Level Meeting on Pandemic Prevention, Preparedness and Response, the text of which was transmitted to member states by the President of the General Assembly in a letter dated 1 September 2023. Pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/275, following the approval of the political declaration by this high-level meeting, I will submit it for the formal adoption by the General Assembly. May I take it that the high-level meeting approves the draft political declaration, which, pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/275, I will then submit for the formal consideration of the Assembly. It is adopted. I thank the Deputy Secretary General. I now give the floor to Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Denis Francis, President of the General Assembly, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, the Right Honorable Helen Clark, and Dr. Axel van Trotsenberg, Senior Managing Director, World Bank Group, Excellencies, Ministers, Heads of Delegation, dear colleagues and friends. First, I would like to start by thanking the President and all member states for endorsing the political declaration. This is a very historic day, and thank you so much indeed. The doctors were unable to cope since they were treating the disease for the first time and in ignorance. The more they come into contact with sufferers, the more liable they were to lose their own lives. In the end, people were overwhelmed by the disaster and abandoned efforts against it. I shall give a statement of what it was like, which people can study in case it should ever attack again, to equip themselves with foreknowledge so that they shall not fail to recognize it. These words could have been written last year. In fact, they were written in the 5th century BC by the ancient Greek historian Thucydides about the plague of Athens. Almost 2.5 millennia later, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated that although much has changed, much has not. It's now more than 4 months since WHO declared an end to COVID-19 as a global health emergency. This virus touched every person on the planet in some way. It stole lives and livelihoods and caused massive social and economic upheaval. It exposed and exacerbated vast inequities and wide cracks in our defenses. And it reminded us that we are one humanity. A pathogen has no regard for the lines humans draw on maps, nor for the color of our politics or the size of our economies. We may be tempted to think that the COVID-19 pandemic is history, but history teaches us that COVID-19 will not be the last pandemic. The question we all face is whether we will be ready when the next one arrives. As leaders, we have a collective responsibility to make sure we are ready. We have a collective responsibility to protect the people we serve. We have a collective responsibility to protect our societies and economies. The political declaration you just have agreed today is a commitment that together we will live up to our responsibility. I thank Ambassador Omar Hilal of Morocco and Ambassador Gilad Erdan of Israel for your leadership of this process. I urge all countries now to take urgent action on the commitments you have made in support of the member state-led process in Geneva. To deliver a strong pandemic accord and effective amendments to the International Health Regulation by May next year, to ensure equitable access to vaccines, tests, treatments, and other medical countermeasures, to fight back against mis- and disinformation that erodes trust, to protect communities by investing in primary health care, to strengthen the global health workforce, to make equity the driving force for change, and to build a stronger WHO at the center of the global health architecture. Even before the pandemic, WHO was transforming to become more effective and efficient, and we will continue to transform. Just as countries are learning the lessons from COVID-19, so we are learning those lessons. We're committed to serving you to fulfill the vision that nations had when they founded WHO 75 years ago. Their conviction then remains our conviction now, that health is not only a fundamental human right, but it's also fundamental to peace and security. Health is a fundamental human right, an end in itself, also a means to development. A healthier world is a safer, fairer, more peaceful, and more prosperous world. I thank you, Mr. President, and back to you.
Yes, very good.
I thank the Director General of the World Health Organization.
Now give the floor to Her Excellency Yoko Kamikawa, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates. The COVID-19 pandemic has made an unprecedented impact, and it became evident that prevention, preparedness, and response in each country make a difference. Based on the lesson learned, the international community must work together hand in hand with a sense of urgency to develop the global health architecture and strengthen PPR for the entire world, including developing countries. As the G7 presidency, Japan has made substantial contributions to strengthening PPR. In Hiroshima, the G7 renewed the commitment to improving global health governance. It is critical to enhance political momentum, including on a leader-level governance, with a view to achieving universal health coverage, or UHC. Japan continues to lead discussions in this regard. Strengthening international norms and regulations, especially strengthening health systems, is essential. This includes surveillance for rapid sharing and aggregation of data and the laboratory testing capacity. Japan will contribute to the negotiations on the pandemic accord and the amendments to the international health regulations. The COVID-19 shed light on the importance of ensuring equitable access to medical countermeasures, or MCM, including vaccines worldwide. Japan is promoting the MCM Delivery Partnership for Equitable Access, launched at the Hiroshima Summit. The G7 highlighted their financial contributions for UHC and PPR, totaling more than 48 billion from the public and private sectors. And Japan expressed its intention to make contributions totaling more than 7.5 billion. Japan is determined to further promote efforts such as the collaboration between finance and health authorities, effective management of the pandemic fund, and the establishment of quick and efficient financing mechanisms during health emergencies, working together with all stakeholders. The next health emergencies can occur anywhere and anytime. Japan continues to work closely with you all. Thank you very much.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Japan. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Riina Sikkut, Minister of Health of Estonia.
The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on universal health coverage is called to order.
We need a few people to go around with a little swish.
Can I invite delegates, please, to take their seats? Heads of state and government,
This is a donation.
Her Excellency Rebecca Akufo-Addo, First Lady, Republic of Ghana, Madam Deputy Secretary General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization, Mr. Alex van Trotsenberg, Senior Managing Director of the World Bank, Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I warmly welcome you to this high-level meeting under the overall theme of universal health coverage, expanding our ambition for health and well-being in a post-COVID world. Before proceeding further, in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 75/315, I first invite the high-level meeting to turn its attention to the draft political declaration entitled Universal Health Coverage, Expanding Our Ambition for Health and Well-Being in a Post-COVID World, the text of which was transmitted to member states by the President of the General Assembly in a letter dated 1st September 2023. Pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 75/315, following the approval of the political declaration by this high-level meeting, I will submit it for the formal adoption by the General Assembly. May I take it that the high-level meeting approves the draft political declaration, which, pursuant to Resolution 75/315, I will then submit for the formal consideration of the Assembly? I hear no objections. It is so decided. I congratulate all member states on their approval of this draft political declaration, which I will submit to the General Assembly for its formal adoption at a later date. Allow me to express my personal appreciation to the co-facilitators for the negotiating process, Her Excellency Carolyn Rodriguez Burkett, the permanent representative of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and His Excellency Suruya Chandawangs, permanent representative of Thailand, for their skillful stewardship and dedicated hard work, which has brought us to this significant outcome. I also extend my sincere thanks to all member states for their flexibility and constructive engagement.
I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Fumio Kishida, Prime Minister of Japan.
「議長、ご列席の皆様、日本は UHC 達成に向けた議論を主導してきました。新型コロナから得た教訓を忘れる前に、国際社会は改めて UHC の達成という目標を思い起こし、行動する時です。本会合は UHC への我々の決意を再確認する絶好の機会です。G7 広島サミットでは、保健システム強化を通じたより強靭、より公平、より持続可能な UHC 達成にコミットしました。具体的には、将来のパンデミックをよりよく予防、備え、対応できるよう、いわゆるパンデミック条約の作成を含め、世界的な健康危機に関する体制を構築・強化することで一致をいたしました。資金面では、UHC 達成のため、G7 として官民合わせて480億ドル以上、日本として75億ドル規模の資金貢献を表明しています。同時にインパクト投資を通じて民間投資の拡大を目指すグローバルヘルスのためのインパクト投資イニシアティブ III を首脳間で承認いたしました。さらに新型コロナで課題となった感染症危機対応医薬品等 MCM への公平なアクセスを確保すべく、MCM への公平なアクセスのための G7 広島ビジョンを発表し、MCM に関するデリバリーパートナーシップ MCDP を立ち上げ、関係国、機関と連携が進んでいます。先般の G20 ニューデリーサミットでも、MCM のデリバリーのための取り組みを 支援していくことが確認されました。こうした世界全体の MHC 達成に向けて G7 UHC グローバルプランとして取りまとめています。今こそ世界のリーダーが協力して UHC を達成する決意を示そうではありませんか。日本も2030年までに途上国を含む世界全体が UHC を達成できるよう、国際社会の取り組みをさらにリードしていく決意です。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
I thank His Excellency Fumio Kishida, Prime Minister of Japan. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency.
And I now give the floor to His Excellency Keizo Kakem, Minister of Health and Labor and Welfare from Japan.
I'm Keizo Takemi, a newly appointed Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare of Japan. My good friend, Francis Omaswa mentions that the importance of the political choice and political commitment. I quite agree with you. Therefore, this year, Japan was the host of the G7. And G7 health ministers meeting in Nagasaki under the theme of the Working Together for a Healthier Future discussed the direction that the global community should take in the the COVID-19 era with the contribution to achieving more resilient, equitable, and sustainable universal health coverage. As one of the main agendas, the G7 formulated the G7 Global Plan for UHC Action Agenda, which focus on the primary health care, of course, and also outlines the actions that the G7 should take towards achieving universal health coverage in the entire world. This G7 Global Plan is showing the direction to be taken to enhance financial resources, strengthen human resources, and collaborate with stakeholders to provide the quality-assured health services based on the concept of leaving no one behind. We believe that the direction indicated here is common, not only to the G7, but also to the world as a whole. In addition, I have consistently promoted the idea of strengthening the health financing is essential for achieving universal health coverage. Based on this idea, as the G20, the presidency in 2019, Japan convened the G20 Joint Finance and Health Ministers meeting for the first time. Furthermore, this year's G7 outcome document indicated the importance of a global hub function, including for financing the knowledge management and human resources on universal health coverage. We believe that such a hub will be able to accelerate efforts for achieving universal health coverage in the entire world. Our discussions at this side event will synergize
I thank you, the Honorable Minister of Health and Labor and Welfare from Japan, and I now give the floor to Ms. Lois Pace, Assistant Secretary from United States of America.
I hope this one is unbreakable. Can I invite all delegates, please, to take your seats? Thank you ever so much for your cooperation in taking your seats, please. The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the fight against tuberculosis is called to order. Heads of state and government, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, President of the Economic and Social Council, Director General of the World Health Organization, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome all of you to this high-level meeting convened under the overall theme, Advancing Science, Finance and Innovation and Their Benefits to Urgently End the Global Tuberculosis Epidemic, in particular by ensuring equitable access to prevention, testing, treatment, and care. Before proceeding further, and in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 77/274, I now invite the high-level meeting to turn its attention to the draft political declaration entitled Political Declaration of the United Nations General Assembly High-Level Meeting on the Fight Against Tuberculosis, Advancing Science, Finance, and Innovation, and Their Benefits to Urgently End the Global Tuberculosis Epidemic, in particular by ensuring equitable access to prevention, testing, treatment, and care, the text of which was transmitted to member states by the President of the General Assembly in a letter dated 1st September 2023. Pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/274, following the approval of the political declaration by this high-level meeting, I will submit it for the formal adoption by the General Assembly. May I take it that the high-level meeting approves the draft political declaration, which, pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 77/274, I will then submit to the formal consideration of the Assembly? I hear no objections. It is so decided. NTB. I congratulate all member states on their approval of this draft political declaration, which I will submit to the General Assembly for its formal adoption at a later date. Allow me to express my sincere appreciation to the co-facilitators of the negotiating process, His Excellency Krzysztof Szyszewski, Permanent Representative of Poland to the United Nations, and His Excellency Bakior Ibragiminov, former Permanent Representative of Uzbekistan to the United Nations, for their skillful stewardship and dedicated hard work, which has brought us to this significant outcome. I also extend my sincere thanks to all member states for their flexibility and constructive engagement. In accordance with General Assembly Resolution 77/274, I now give the floor to Ms. Handa Enk Amgalan, tuberculosis survivor and author of the book Stigmatized, a Mongolian Girl's Journey from Stigma and Illness to Empowerment.
Do not tell anyone. These were the words of my doctor who diagnosed me with tuberculosis. And 12 years later, I'm here today to tell everyone my story from this UN stage and urge world leaders to destigmatize tuberculosis, because stigma costs life. My name is Handa Inkamaklang, and I am from Mongolia. Tuberculosis remains highly stigmatized in many developing countries where the illness is most prevalent, forcing hundreds and thousands of people to hide their illness and delay seeking help, which results in loss of valuable time for early diagnosis or preventing their treatment altogether. Sadly, consequences of self and social stigma are more enhanced for young women and girls who are held to higher standards of health, well-being, and beauty in patriarchal societies globally. When society says things like, she is too skinny because she has TB, she is unworthy of marriage because she has or had TB, or she continues to have TB because she is irresponsible, we as a society are bullying TB patients one step closer to death, a death that is fully preventable, and this has to stop. This is why I'm here today to ask world leaders to treat TB not only medically, but also socially by tackling its attached stigma, thereby removing one of the biggest barriers to medical assessment. Stigma is putting the medical progress we are making globally behind. Because if TB patients are too ashamed to admit to being ill with TB, or if they are too afraid to be seen outside TB clinics by their employers or by their classmates due to fear of losing employment or being ostracized in schools, stigma is going to continue to drive patients away. A major reason why TB is still killing someone every 22 seconds as we speak. We need targeted support on workplace protection, mental health, public awareness, women and girls empowerment, and accountability to affected populations to reduce TB stigma. Unfortunately, TB stigma still exists to this day. 10 years after recovering from tuberculosis, I decided to share my story. Through my book, Stigmatized, to be the voice for others and break silence. And my mother said, don't do it. This is not because she doesn't love me or she doesn't feel proud of me. This is because she wanted to protect me. And this is the magnitude of TB stigma that is still here today. I still decided to publish my book despite her concern, because I could no longer be silent knowing that stigma is stripping millions of TB patients, including little girls, of their dignity. And the worst part is, they are internalizing these voices into self-stigma, truly believing that they are somehow inferior just because they had tuberculosis. This stigma is even worse in extra vulnerable and marginalized communities, including refugee settlements. In my current work supporting refugees in East Africa, I witnessed the same stigma among youth struggling with tuberculosis. And for them, the stigma, it's double stigma. Stigma of being a refugee and stigma for having tuberculosis. This is madness. This is real madness. And this has to stop. And I really hope it starts from right here and right now. And I call on each one of you to understand what TB stigma means in your country and act on it. Let us not use stigma as an excuse to not talk about TB, but instead, Let us speak up. Use the political power in your hands to save the dignity and lives of people affected by tuberculosis. 12 years ago, stigma silenced me, but it will not anymore. I will continue to fight for a society where no one feels unworthy just because they have or had TB. And I urge you to join me in this fight. Thank you.
What a testimony of bravery, courage, and commitment. I thank Ms. Handa Eng Amalan. Heads of state and government, excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We have just heard the last speaker for the opening segment of this high-level meeting. I thank our eminent speakers once again for their participation and insightful interventions. As our special guests depart the podium, kindly remain seated. The plenary segment of the high-level meeting will begin shortly.
Je remercie Monsieur le vice-ministre de la Santé de la Bulgarie. À présent, je donne la parole à Son Excellence Monsieur Eiji Hinoshita, vice-ministre de la Santé mondiale, du bien-être social du ministère de la Santé, du Travail et du bien-être social du Japon.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I'm honored to have this opportunity to take the floor today. First, I'd like to express my heartfelt condolences to those who lost their lives by the earthquake that hit the central part of the Kingdom of Morocco and the flood disaster that hit the eastern part of the state of Libya. My sympathy reached out to the bereaved families. I sincerely pray for the quick recovery of those affected, as well as for the prompt reconstruction of the affected areas. Now, I would like to go into the agenda. Although tuberculosis is a preventable and curable infectious disease, the lives of 1.5 million people are still lost from TB every year. As the COVID-19 pandemic has set back the path to end the TB epidemic targeted in SDG 3.3, the global community needs to further strengthen its cooperation to achieve this goal. In Japan, from the 1930s until the end of World War II, TB was recognized as an incurable disease and widespread across the country, making it the leading cause of death. Since then, Japan has made a concerted effort with the involvement of both the public and the private sectors to combat TB. Beginning with the enactment of the TB control law in 1951, Japan has established a system that all TB patients can receive necessary treatment. Through those efforts, Japan finally reached the level of low tuberculosis prevalence country in 2021. Based on the experience in order to end the TB epidemic by 2030, Japan has contributed to finally end technical support through international organization for more than 50 years under the concept of promoting human security and leaving no one behind. In addition, Japan announced the pledge to contributing up to $1.08 billion at the Global Fund's 7th Replenishment Conference in 2022. As the world faces various challenges today, innovative research and development of vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics is essential. Japan will continue to contribute to fight against TB through support for the Global Fund Stop TB Partnership, G-Fund Unit Aid, particularly in the development and dissemination of innovative diagnostic and therapeutics. This year, Japan assumed the G7 presidency and promoted contributing to achieving more than resilient, equitable, and sustainable universal health coverage as one of the main agenda. The G7 confirmed the need to accelerate the efforts for various health challenges, including TB, with have been set back by the COVID-19 pandemic. The G7 also demonstrated its commitment to ensure synergies among the outcome of UNGA high-level meeting on TB, PPR, and USC. I would like to call to all representatives for your cooperation in further advancing these efforts. Finally, 5 years have passed since the UNGA high-level meeting on TB held in 2018. Seizing today's opportunity again, I look forward to seeing each country further advance its TB control measures toward achieving SDG 3.3 targeted by 2030. Japan will also continue to strengthen health systems to promote TB control and proactively address various global health challenges, especially TB. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le vice-ministre de la Santé du Japon. À présent, je donne la parole à son Excellence Madame Margarida Tavares, secrétaire d'État à la promotion de la santé du Portugal.